if you're going into NFTs for the explicit purpose of, hey, I want to find these arbitrage opportunities and I see these projects going and selling for tons of money and I want to get rich quick scheme, probably not the best way to approach the NFT market or whatnot. I've been approaching it around just kind of getting to know different communities, getting to know different projects, kind of viewing it as a way to just support and learn interesting artists and interesting concepts. And that's sort of been my optimization criteria right now.
Hi everyone, it's Julie Verhage Greenberg here with your Tux Time podcast from Fintech Today, where we talk about all things fintech. And in this episode, I am joined by Charley Ma, who is an FTT expert, as well as GM of Fintech at Alloy, a New York-based fintech that we all know and love. And we're going to dive into NFTs today. We've talked about NFTs on the podcast, I think once or twice before. At the very least, when my husband created one of his own and tried to sell it and whatnot a few months ago. And Charley, you're very into NFTs now, and I feel like you've probably been watching and learning about it for a while, but I haven't seen you gain a lot of interest until the last few weeks. Talk to me a little bit about, what made you finally take the dive in, and am I correct in thinking that you've just been like sitting on the sidelines learning about it before doing anything?
It's a good question. I think I've actually been, to be honest, I was kind of ignoring the whole thing around NFTs for a while. And I think my initial extreme reaction was, we've been through a few cycles as it relates to crypto and DeFi now, right? And a lot of the things on NFTs remind me of a lot of the hype that was happening around ICOs back in, I don't know, 2016, 2017 or so, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a long story short, I think I was okay. You know what? It's probably dumb of me just to completely ignore what's going on here, and I wanted to understand what the hype was, and I think it was also a function of it seemed as though half my Twitter feed was all about NFTs, and so started to just dive into some of these communities and learn more about what's happening here.
So you've written about NFTs for us twice now. Let's talk about your first piece first. So it's sort of just explaining a few different NFTs that you've been sort of getting in on. Like, okay, so now that we've established that you've learned about them, how do you actually go about figuring out which NFTs are worthwhile, or even just like finding which ones to buy, how to buy them? Because there's like gas money and like
Yeah.
all these other things that go into it. Like, it's very confusing.
Yes, yeah, there definitely is. There's the first time UX around exploring, buying, interacting with NFTs is still extremely confusing, and I am still definitely in the beginning stages of understanding that. Like to be honest, kind of understand gas fees as it relates to Ethereum and what it does, but I actually honestly don't. If you actually explain it, I would not have a really good recommendation other than it's very expensive. Everyone's complaining about it because of network congestion, right? That's all I know. I
Yeah.
think my recommendation, I feel I've been getting people asking me, well, how do I get into NFTs and whatnot? And my whole thing initially has been, if you're going into NFTs for the explicit purpose of, hey, I want to find these arbitrage opportunities, and I see these, these crypto apes, these projects, going and selling for tons of money, and I want to get rich quick scheme. Probably not the best way to approach the NFT market or whatnot. I think I've been approaching it around just kind of getting to know different communities, getting to know different projects, kind of viewing it as a way to just support and learn interesting artists and interesting concepts. And that's sort of been my, I would say, optimization criteria right now. And so I've set aside, I have some Ethereum that I just set aside, and you know what? I'm going to use this to just learn about what's going on around NFTs, and I fully expect to lose most of it. And I think that's actually made it. It's a first world problem, but it's made it a bit more fun, right? Where I'm not going and chase. Like I don't have a casual $200,000 to go and offload on one JPEG, right? I'm sure we all wish we did. I'm buying these projects are much cheaper. At least relative compared to some of these other more well known projects, and that's been a lot more fun for me.
So the money that you're putting into NFTs, where else would it be going if you were not putting it in? Would it be going into other crypto? Would it be going into vacations? Would it be going into stocks? Would it just be sitting in a savings account? What otherwise would it be doing?
Yeah, it was. I mean, most of it was just. I bought some Ethereum, some Bitcoin a while ago, and I've just been long term holding it, I would say, and so decided to just take some of it and park it into some of the NFTs. And so I would say it was probably the highly speculative crypto portion of where I'm taking the capital out. Yeah, so definitely
Okay,
not from
got it.
savings, definitely not from, a vacation. If I told my girlfriend that I'm using our vacation money to buy NFTs, I don't think that would fly for me. So it's coming from I have a very small portion where this is highly speculative. I fully expect to lose most if not all that capital. But it's interesting, and I'm using it as a way to learn and see if there is something interesting here.
So we talked a lot about learning more about this, and I believe your second piece for us about NFTs kind of alludes to this a little bit in terms of how are you going about learning about this space. And one of the people that you are learning from is Slums.
Oh yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it. There's a zero too, so maybe it's not even any of those above.
Right. So this persona on Twitter, though, is very deep in this space. And I assume that this is one of the ways that you have learned more about NFTs, correct?
Yeah, no, I think it's been a lot of fun interacting with these essentially creators and artists that are also themselves exploring, understanding NFTs. They're creating art, profile pics, interesting experiments through NFTs, and because they're so early, you often get to interact directly with them, right? You can join their Discord. They're going to spin up a small community. You can follow them on Twitter, shoot a DM over, chat with them, and just get a ground floor understanding as to how they're exploring. And I generally find that I learn better through conversations through osmosis. And so it's been fun just following all these other people as they've been exploring and learning and launching their projects.
What's the best way to find these people? Do you find like a couple on Twitter and then just see who they're following? Or are there different like feeds that you can subscribe to, Reddit threads, newsletters?
It's a good question. I don't have a great answer for it yet. I think there's this whole sub economy I think is starting to spring out around NFTs, right? So I think there are some newsletters out there. There are some discords. There's definitely an active subreddit following NFT drops, but I've not found a high signal source. If anyone out there does know of one, let me know. I'd be very interested in learning more. But I've mostly been. I think my method of curation has sort of been. Okay, great. There are definitely people that are active on Twitter that have a lot of followers that I think are tweeting some interesting things around crypto and around NFTs, and I've just been following them, and also just seeing who they're following and who they're tracking, and just I think kind of just lurking and consuming content. If I see a Discord or a project I'm interested, I'll hop in the Discord and just every once in a while we'll pop in, usually late at night when I'm exploring NFT stuff, to see what's kind of happening on in the community. And mostly just been bouncing around and absorbing and just clicking around stuff, which is probably not the most methodical method of exploration, but it's actually been a lot of fun.
Have you made an NFT yet?
I have not. I have not made or minted an NFT. I
Are
am
you going
curious.
to? Yeah, I think you should. I think that should be like your next step of exploration. What would you want a NFT? Would you draw
I have
something? Would
no
it be
clue.
there's now people that are literally like NFTing like lists.
Yeah.
Just like lists of like things they need to do. It's I don't get it, Charlie.
That's not a bad idea. I'm very educated, like sort of an educated kind of, but there are sort of different categories of NFTs, right?
Hmm.
And I think Schlom's, kind of pointed this out too, right? I think his falls into the very much more of the conceptual art, right? On leveraging some of the unique aspects of NFTs and the fact that they're one for one, it's all on the blockchain, and you certified ownership on digital identity around it. Like there's conceptual art pieces, right? There's this whole thing on profile pics, right? So that's where the Bored Apes and all those are coming in, where they're, uh, you know, they're only making 10,000 of these, and they're specific profile pics, and there's different attributes and properties, and it's basically just like trading online Pokemon cards, right? To a certain extent. And then there's even, I think, some more generative art, and then there's also kind of these like interesting primitive projects, right? So I think Loot was the most kind of famous or popular one over the past three or so 3 4 weeks or so, where it's just gaming items or items that you would expect to see in a game. And so there's definitely different categories of projects, and they all have their different merits and interests. And then there's those that I think are just purely speculative, and it's, hey, cool, here's a weird photo I took, and see if anyone likes it, and see what happens with the internet.
Okay, so we've established that you're learning about it and seeing some use cases on a personal level, but we've also started to see businesses or creators in
Yeah.
particular start using NFTs more frequently, whether it be a TikTok star or a musician or an athlete, or even like businesses themselves that are starting to do things that are NFT. What are your thoughts on that from that perspective?
It's definitely been interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's been a long sort of underappreciation of digital art, right? So there's like the artistic component of it, I think, with creators launching NFT projects, with different individuals launching different things on the blockchain, and there's obviously a lot of premium being associated with NFTs right now, right? And part of it is definitely hype. And part of it's definitely this just weird environment of everyone's still mostly at home, and everyone's just kind of trading things in real time and doing it 24/7, right? There's a lot of, I think, unique
Yeah.
timing aspects to it.
We're sick of three times levered options on Robinhood. We need
Exactly.
something
We
different.
need something more. I need more leverage. I need something even more speculative. Uh, but I also think it's a unique opportunity, yeah. I don't know. This is cheesy, but it all goes down to building a community, right? Where the reason I think the main reason as to why a lot of people outside of speculation have been purchasing NFTs is the feeling that, okay, once you buy one, right, you're part of this community, you're part of the circle. There's this an interesting meta game, I think, on NFT discovery, where you want to be one of the first people to find the project before it gets big, right? I think that's something that's been true of anything, whether that's even finding companies before they break out, or finding projects, finding that cool restaurant before anyone else finds out about it, right? And gets hyped up, and the lines are crazy. There's, I think, a value in being quote unquote first to things, right? And I think NFTs are almost an extreme version of that. And I think that ties back to there's an interesting kind of community and credibility that you get around that. And so I think that some of the brands launching stuff, it depends upon what they're launching and how they're launching. And I think some of that can be just very dilutive and a pure money grab, and those are less interesting. But I think others that are actively like engaging and building up their customer base and using it as an opportunity to continue to build a relationship, and to build a brand around it, is actually quite interesting.
So we talk about a lot of it being hype, and I remember a lot of SPACs were kind of hype too. So how do you kind of distinguish, or like, can you even distinguish between the hype and reality at this point? And what do you think could kind of start shifting that? I feel like SPACs kind of just suddenly they had like one bad week, and then everyone was like, "Oh, SPACs are over," and now we haven't really seen that much anymore. Is it the same type of thing that would put a chill on NFTs, or do you think it might be something else?
If I did know, I'd probably be making a whole lot more money now. I don't know. I mean, I think the SPACs is an interesting example, right? Because there were companies, and quite a few companies, that did have successful entries into the public markets via a SPAC, right? And yes, there was definitely way too many SPAC vehicles being raised, and I think a bunch of them are going to die, or sort of wind down over the next 2 to 3 years, because there just isn't that many high quality companies, right? But I think it's you as a curator, investor, or whatever, and you should come up with your own criteria as to like what determines a high quality project, right? There were definitely high quality SPACs that if you invested in continued to perform really really well. And it was a great way for those companies to enter markets. And there were, I think all of the like electronic vehicle SPACs that backed companies with completely zero product with zero tech. Yeah, probably a little bit more hypey and much more of a speculative asset, right? And you're not really investing into an actual company there. And so I think you can probably apply a similar type of framework around, picking NFT projects that you're interested in. My ratio, I don't know, my internal framework tends to be some function of community engagement. It tends to be some function of the art quality. I really like just backing cool, interesting, thought-provoking art. Commitment from the creators as to building a fair and equitable project, right? Building something interesting, novel, and really committed to investing into that community. And then the rest is sort of up to the markets, and that's something that as we know, in the past 2 years has been extremely hard to predict and understand.
If NFTs stick around, which we've established, we think they will to some extent, even though some of it is hype right now.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know exactly what will happen. But essentially, if they do, where will they be traded? Do we think something like a Robinhood, a Cash App, a TD Ameritrade is going to have NFTs for trade on there? Or do we think that it would be only the platforms like Coinbase and others that are very much known in the crypto world that would be the ones to dive into this?
I don't know. I mean, OpenSea seems to be just crushing it. Like I think they're kind of turning
Mm-hmm.
into the default marketplace for NFTs, and I think seem to extend out their lead there. I definitely wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of other companies try and fast follow. I think it's going to be those that are kind of crypto native. So I would probably bet more on Coinbase and less so on a TD Ameritrade, if you will. But I think that the other thing that's been interesting and exciting too is that we're also seeing these traditional art houses and auction houses start to engage, right? Christie's and Sotheby's have both launched auctions around some well-known NFT projects, and they're partnering up with a lot of these sort of infrastructure providers that are enabling them to get access to NFTs. And so I think there's going to be a whole, economy and a whole infrastructure, scaffoldings to be built around NFTs. But it's still definitely early days. Like I think everyone's, it's super overhyped. I think everyone's been saying that about crypto, right? I think at this point nowadays, like most of my friends actually do have some exposure to crypto, which 2 years ago I think would have been the most ridiculous statement to say, right? And I don't think it's a crazy statement necessarily now based on where that's going to say, oh, maybe 2-3 years from now, everyone's going to have some NFT that they own that they really enjoy that they invested in, and that's just the way the world works. But we'll see.
I think regardless that you should make your NFT now while it is all very hyped, just in case. So figure out if it's going to be a list or a drawing or whatever it might be. Mint it, and we'll have you back on to talk about how well that thing does. If you even still have time for us anymore after selling it for so much money.
Yeah, I'm putting it for auction for bid right now. I don't even know what I'm making, but I'm taking offers.
That is it for today's episode, though. If you have any questions or thoughts on this episode, ping Charley or me on Twitter. And if you want to stay up to date on NFTs and everything else in the fintech space, go to fintechtoday.co. Otherwise, thank you for joining us again, Charley. We'll have you on again soon.
Sounds great.